Hello everyone, Rick Yasayan, and we are at the Festival of Fruit 2018. This is our 50th year anniversary, and at the moment we are at the home of Joe and Jesseline Hewitt, and they live in Los Gatos, California, and we're going to take a look at this beautiful property that they've got. So right now, would you take just a moment and make sure that you like us on Facebook or love us on Facebook? We appreciate that too. If you have a chance, please do share this with your friends. And on YouTube, subscribe to us on that. We really appreciate it. All of you have really been helping. We ask that you do it again for this one. This is number 16. So this is Joe Hewitt. This is your beautiful home, Joe. I've got to ask you a question right off. How long have you been working on what we're about to see?
I've been here for 7 years, and we pretty much started working on the backyard the first week that I bought the place. It was all just a big slope with a bunch of weeds on it and a tennis court at the bottom, and so we've been slowly terracing it and planting fruit trees.
We've got a real treat for you. For only 7 years, you're going to see some really unbelievable development in this yard, and we had a quick tour just a bit ago, and unbelievable. So why don't we get up and let's take a walk. Joe, this is something I've never seen. Sancho, what is this?
Sancho, also known as Japanese pepper. It's it makes sort of a black pepper type of a little berry that people use, I guess, in Japanese cooking. I didn't even know about the berry when I bought it. I got it for these leaves, which have a very nice scent. It can be used as an herb, like rosemary or sage or something like that. Yeah. So
you dry it, chop it up, mix it in, or use it in a stir fry?
I've always just, actually I'll tell you the story. The reason why I have this plant is I was briefly growing small little vegetables and herbs for a fancy restaurant in town here, and they specifically requested I grow this plant.
Oh wow.
They took one tiny little leaf and they would use it as a garnish on a piece of meat.
Okay.
So that's why I have it.
Oh, very nice. Interesting. Behind us, we've got a rather unusual fruit that I've only seen one time growing in Florida, and we are certainly way north of Florida, but it looks pretty good here. You want to tell us about this, please?
Yeah, this is Gac Fruit. It's popular in Southeast Asia, and I've got it on this fence competing with a bunch of ornamental passion flower vines. It's a good competitor. It's beating some of them out. But the fruit that this vine makes, I haven't gotten the fruit yet myself, but it makes a fruit that has kind of like bitter melon, these bright red seeds inside, and there's this red goopy stuff around the seeds that you can eat, although it doesn't really taste as good as it looks. So it's kind of like food coloring. You can use it to turn your rice pink.
That's what I've heard for the most part. Related to kind of a cucumber or something on that order.
It's in the cucurbit family, like cucumber.
We have got a beautiful, and I've heard this called by two different names, Babaco and Babaco.
Yeah. I've heard that too.
You want to tell about this, because a lot of people are unfamiliar.
I call it Babaco. It's in the papaya family, but it's nothing like a true tropical papaya. It's a totally different genus. In fact, Vasconcelia, which tends to be comprised of mountain papayas, papayas from the highlands, and this one is actually a man-made hybrid of several Vasconcelia species. So someone created this because they thought it was a good quality fruit, although I'd say it's still pretty controversial from people who've tasted it. It's totally seedless, it's very juicy, and it's much more frost tolerant, cold tolerant than a tropical papaya. So I've killed a lot of papayas, and I've even killed one of these, so they can't take too much frost, but this spot where I've got them planted is a little bit frost protected from the oak trees over here.
Well, you know, what's amazing is really, if I stood up, my head would come just about just shy of the top of this, and yet look at all the fruit. This that's ready now, and this that looks like what, 6 months, a year.
You know, they hang for a year. These fruits were flowers about a year ago.
Okay.
And so then this is the growth it did in the winter while it wasn't flowering, and then it starts again the next year. So
Wow.
they hang for a really long time.
Yeah. Yeah, first time I ran into them was about 20 years ago in Australia, of all places.
Wow.
Yeah, they were growing it there.
What do you think of these, Rick?
It's an interesting fruit. It certainly has a lot of people that do like it a lot. For me, I haven't had the opportunity too many times to eat it. It's certainly not as sweet as some of the papaya varieties, but it certainly has a lot of people that do like it a lot. Absolutely.
Well, these are almost ready, but I wait till they fall off. I find them on the ground.
This is one of my favorite fruits. I love this particular kind of fruit, tree tomato. And there are two varieties. Which one do you have here?
This is an orange one.
So that's this one.
That's the red one.
Oh, this is
Yeah,
red. Oh,
orange.
you're talking okay, orange.
Yeah, yeah. This one gets kind of a light orange color.
Yeah.
Tree tomatoes, or tamarillos, as they're sometimes called, are mostly, if you find them, mostly they're going to be coming from South America, where they're semi-cultivated, but actually New Zealand, if you're fortunate enough to get seeds of a New Zealand tamarillo, that's actually a name that they created in New Zealand to market them, and they've developed some of the world's best tree tomatoes. This one actually came from some random place in South America, so it's not one of the better ones, to be honest.
Well, I've seen these growing in Africa. In fact, they juiced them in Africa a number of years ago when I was visiting there. This particular tree I see is filled with small ones. They're all green. They're not quite yet ripe. But a lot of people don't know how to use them. They call it a tree tomato. How do you like to eat it?
This is the first time I've gotten more than a couple fruits at a time.
Okay.
This plant is about 2 years old. So far I've just eaten them fresh, and they're okay that way. Most people who like these like them for juicing.
Yeah, for juicing.
Yeah.
Well, what I like to do is bite off the end, the bottom end, just bite off that end, and then just bite my way from the base of it up and suck the juice out.
Oh yeah?
And it's delicious that way. Try it a time or two on some of your new fruit. Yeah. I recognize the leaves. This is a currant.
It's a currant. It's a Rye Bee's. It's
Okay.
native to California, and this is really, I didn't even plant this for the fruit. It's one of those low water plants, and the birds absolutely love it, and they plant these all over the yard for me. So if you see more
volunteers,
of them,
right?
Yes. If you see more of these, I didn't plant them.
So I've got to try eating one. Wonderful flavor, but I don't recommend it. Okay, let me guess what's next.
Green Sapote.
Okay.
So green Sapote is a cousin of the Mamey Sapote that many more people are familiar with, and it comes from a colder place, probably higher up in the elevation in Mexico. And the cool thing about green Sapote is the fruit is almost identical to Mamey, but it's smaller. Some people say it tastes better. I've tasted them, and I think they're exactly the same in flavor. But for us up here in Northern California, Mamey is just not going to do it here. Green Sapote, on the other hand, seems to really like a little bit of cold weather. It can't take a ton of frost, but what's gotten me excited about it is every winter, while a lot of my other so-called tropical plants are sitting there shivering in the cold, the green Sapote is pushing out new growth.
Wow.
And looking really good.
Wonderful.
And this particular one is not grafted, so the fact that it's flowering for the first year.
Yeah, it's got a few little buds on there.
Yeah,
tiny.
I don't know if it's going to fruit this year, but that's very promising, because normally you'd buy a grafted tree to get flowers.
Yeah. So Joe, this little tree here, what do we got? I have the feeling I know.
Yeah, this is the more tropical cousin of green sapote, Mamey Sapote.
Yeah.
I don't want to get anyone too excited thinking these grow up here. I have this in the ground because I had a really delicious Mamey Sapote 2 years ago. I planted the seed, it grew, and I just kind of left it outside expecting it to die, but it hasn't died yet. So I'm going to let it go as long as it wants to go, and we'll see what happens.
Now, I've eaten Mamey Sapote. I've not eaten the green sapote yet. So how do you compare the flavor between the two? I know they're similar, very similar,
Yeah.
right?
I tasted green sapote in Hawaii, and for my taste buds they were the exact same flavor, but other people swear that green sapote has a different flavor. And I'm starting to guess that maybe when they're grown in California in drier conditions, they develop more flavor, because everyone I know who tasted them from San Diego and LA just raves about the caramel flavor that they develop.
This little plant, I've only seen once before, and it was probably as tall as you are, and there was one fruit on it, and the raccoons got it.
Oh.
And that was on Roger Meyer's home. And so tell us about this. This is a wonderful plant if you can get it to produce.
Well, I love cherimoyas. They're one of my favorite fruits. The llama is a close relative, and it comes from Mexico, and it doesn't like the cold weather as much as cherimoya.
Right.
Which is why I have it planted here in my oak canopy where things don't frost quite as readily. But as you can see from this picture here, Llama is very rich pink color. People have described it to me as blueberry yogurt. And I consider this another one of my very experimental trees that I wouldn't be shocked if it doesn't live very long. But the neat thing about this one is it's grafted to cherimoya rootstock.
Ah, excellent. So
it
might just do something. Good for you. Yeah. I love it when people experiment. Okay, we've got another unusual one not many people have heard of. You want to tell us about this?
Yeah, this is guabiju.
Okay.
I am really excited about guabiju for a couple of reasons. One, it comes from the same part of southern Brazil and Uruguay as the feijoa, so it's pretty much guaranteed to adapt well to our climate here. And two, hardly anyone has grown or fruited it in California. I know 3 people who have fruiting guabijus in California, and everyone speaks very highly of it. It's in the myrtle family, like jabuticabas and guavas, and it's said to have a similar flavor to jabuticabas.
Great. And about how much longer before you should get fruit with this? Got about 6 foot.
It's 4 years old, so I'm thinking maybe 2 more years.
2 more years?
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got some Eugenias.
Yeah, I've got a few different ones around this bed. This big one in front of me is Eugenia involucrata, cherry of the Rio Grande.
Okay.
And I've had this tree for 2 years, and I was starting to worry if it was gonna ever fruit much for me. The first 2 years it did almost nothing, and then this year, boom, it just cranked out hundreds of fruit, and I love them. They're just fantastic. It's still not very common, but it should be, because it's I've honestly gotten more fruit out of this than out of my real cherry trees.
And that's after 2 years in the ground.
2 years. I mean, it was very big when I bought it, to be fair, but once it got going, they make a lot of fruit. Yeah, and then this guy right next to it doesn't really have a common name. I call it by its Latin name, Eugenia calycina, and it's closely related to the cherry of the Rio Grande, but the leaves are much larger, and the fruit, much like the leaves, is much larger and elongated. It has a very similar flavor, and it's still kind of an undomesticated fruit, you might say, but I find stuff like that really interesting.
Yeah. Again, from Brazil, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So the way to tell the difference between these two is the cherry of the Rio Grande has much smaller leaves, and the calycina leaves are much larger, and the fruit is also much like the leaves, larger and elongated.
And more compact, and each side going up, whereas this is a little more spread out. Very interesting.
Yeah. There's debate whether these are the same species and this is just like a subspecies. They haven't figured that out yet.
Okay, Joe, I gotta ask you, what is this lovely stuff? If I were a cat, I'd be rolling in it.
This is called Yerba Buena. It's a California native. And I loved looking for interesting ground covers under my trees instead of just the wood chips.
Yeah.
And this is a great ground cover because it doesn't take a lot of water away from the trees. It spreads really fast. It smells like mint.
It does.
It's got a wonderful scent, and when you walk on it, it just releases that perfume into the air. Sometimes when I think about the flavor of these fruits here, I get confused. I imagine them being minty because I'm always smelling this while I'm eating them.
Have you tried making a tea out of this?
Yeah, I have, yeah. It does make a very nice mint-like tea.
Wow. Can I take a cutting?
Absolutely.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I am definitely going to do that. So just in water there, you can even see there's little tiny flowers on it. And when you rub the leaves, a nice minty kind of, it is part of the mint family, I think. The stems on mint typically are rectangular or square, and this kind of, I'm not positive. We'll have to look this one up. This is beautiful. I believe we have the largest fruit of North America.
Yes.
And it is, if I think it right, of the Anonaceae.
That's right. It's
Tell us what it is.
pawpaw. It's the North American Anona, and I've got a lot of pawpaws here. I love Anonas. I love cherimoyas, and I've had pawpaws a few times. They're so delicious, and they're so much easier to grow up here in the Bay Area than the other Anonas. This particular one, I've got a bunch of grafted pawpaws around the yard, but this one's close to my heart because this tree came from the yard of a friend of mine named Bill. If any of you guys watch YouTube gardening videos, you might know Bill's YouTube channel, Green Garden Guy. He, I guess 20 years ago, got really into pawpaws and grew a ton of them from seed in his yard in Fremont, and this was the only one he liked the fruit on. So when he decided to move to Hawaii, he asked me if I wanted to dig this thing up, and so I moved it over, and it's for 2 years in a row given me some fruit, and they are indeed a very good pawpaw.
Wonderful. Now I got a question for you, because we've been going through your yard. How much rainfall do you get here?
Ooh,
approximately?
a lot more than you guys down south.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think our average rainfall is something like 25 or 30 inches, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
But you know, the 2 winters ago, it was like 3 times that.
Wow, wow. And then the temperature range in this area, how low does it get?
We're zone 9B, which I found to be pretty accurate. That means that winters are typically 25 to 30 degrees. And the lowest I've ever seen here in my 7 years was about 26.
Okay. And then your high temperatures would be like today?
Yeah, today's a pretty typical summer day, 85 degrees or so.
Okay, we've got an interesting one right here. And this is a Portuguese letter. So that would be pronounced Araçá.
I believe so, yeah.
And my guess is Piranga.
That sounds good to me.
Tell us about this.
This is another Eugenia. I grew this tree from seed. I like to collect rare seeds from around the world, and Brazil in particular is a hot spot for rare fruits. So this is Eugenia laytonii is the Latin name, and in the wild, this fruit was collected in the wild. It's not really grown in people's yards so much yet. So in the wild, this tree, I've been told, gets really tall. It just goes straight to the sky, and it has, like guavas, that beautiful peeling bark, and it makes this fruit, which I'm told is a little sweet, a little sour, kind of like a strawberry or a lemon guava, if you've had that, but much larger.
Yeah. Wow. So we're talking about this size?
Maybe a tiny bit smaller than that.
Smaller? Okay.
I think.
Okay. Well, tell us what we have here. This is wonderful.
Well, it's not exactly a greenhouse. It's more like a shed that doesn't get much sunlight. So I do all my growing plants from seed in here under artificial lights.
Okay.
And sometimes when I'm rooting cuttings, I put them in here. And it stays, I got the fan. It gets pretty humid in here with the windows closed. And I've had a lot of success growing things from seed, and got this big stand with many different trays so I can put a few hundred plants in. Yeah, so I grow plants from seed, typically all in one pot. I stuff a bunch of seeds in one pot on a heating mat, and when they're too big for that little pot, I put them in these individual pots under the lights here until they get too big for these pots, and then they go outside.
So what have we got in this area?
These are some rare Jabuticabas.
This I've only read about, never seen a plant before. Tell us about this.
This Kwai Muk, it's an artocarpus, just like jackfruit.
Mm-hmm.
Jackfruit comes from India, Kwai Muk comes from China, and it's got a lot more cold tolerance than a jackfruit. It's also a very different looking fruit. It is about the size of maybe a fig, and some of them are pink on the inside, some of them are orange. I've never been lucky enough to taste one, but I'm growing it here because so many people have told me that they can take down to about 25 degrees. There are some big ones in Florida, in places in central Florida where it does get fairly cold in the wintertime. It's a slow grower, so far at least, but I think it has a lot of potential up here in Northern California.
Nice. And the one to your right?
This is Amla, or Philanthus emblica, and Amla comes from India. It's I think one of its names is Indian gooseberry. It looks like a gooseberry, it's sour like a gooseberry, and almost no one eats them out of hand. I had some Indian people on my tours, and they were telling me you can go to the Indian supermarket and buy frozen amla, you can buy pickled amla, amla juice that probably is sweetened. So it's a popular fruit for processing.
Yeah. Have you ever had gooseberry pie?
No.
Oh, well, that's what I'd try with
Amla
that.
pie. I'm going to get some frozen amla and do that.
Yeah.
And it's also a very beautiful tree.
Okay, we've got a very interesting fruit that's just coming into recognition now. Tell us about this.
This is Youngmay. It's a great mystery to me why Youngmay is not grown here in the US widely. It's extremely rare, but in China it's an extremely popular fruit, and it's a very delicious fruit. So right now it's just slowly becoming available here because some very brave people made the trouble to import the top Chinese cultivars of Youngmay named Bichi and Dongquai maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and slowly their efforts are trickling out to other people. My trees here are grafted onto a rootstock that is actually a California native. Sometimes you'll see it in nurseries called wax myrtle, or California wax myrtle. A lot of people probably have it in their yards and don't even know it's in the same family, and you can graft this Youngmay to it.
Wonderful. Now we're supposed to have a talk on this at the festival tomorrow.
That's right, yes. Yunfei Chen, who is one of the people that were responsible for importing these, is giving a talk at the Festival of Fruit on his adventure, not only successfully bringing the plants in, but getting fruit from his trees in Fremont.
Wow, how neat. Now what would you consider the taste? You've tasted them. What's the taste like?
It's a little bit like a strawberry or a raspberry. It's got that sweet and sour sort of tartness, but the Dongquai cultivar in particular I like because it has like a rosewater overtone to it.
Oh wow.
It's very, very nice flavor.
Wow.
You know, I like to test fruits on my wife. She
I like to test mine there too. Yeah.
She doesn't like sour fruits, so if I give her a fruit, if it's too sour, she will tell me right away. And she gave the thumbs up to Youngmay. So even though it is a little bit tart, it's not too tart for people who don't like that.
This may very well become one of the new antioxidant superfruits.
Oh gosh.
Who knows?
I wouldn't be surprised.
So we have here a very interesting graft, one that I've not seen used before. Could you tell a little about that?
Yeah, this type of graft, I was told it's called a bottle graft. The bottle is no longer here, but when this was grafted, you can see the rootstock and the scion were cut only on one side and then fused together. And then to keep the scion from drying out, it was actually put in a bottle of water that was tied to the branch. I've been told these can be cleft grafted, the most common style of graft, but they're prone to drying out. So if you do the graft in the summertime, the bottle graft is a good way to go.
Yeah, keep it wet, keep it moist. Very interesting. Thank you. What have we here?
This is hardy kiwi or kiwi berry, Actinidia arguta, and it's basically a grape-sized version of a kiwi with no hair on it, and you just pop them in your mouth. I've been growing these here. I've got the regular fuzzy kiwi down the end, and I've got these all planted since I think 2014. And there's kind of a mysterious thing happening this year. To get fruit from these, you're supposed to need a male and a female, unless you have a variety called Isai, which is supposedly self-fertile. But I didn't plant Isai because I was told it wasn't one of the better ones. So I planted this one, Ken's Red, and next to it is Anona, and they both need male pollen to make fruit, so they say. But here, if you look at the Ken's Red, it's loaded with fruit this year, even though my male didn't flower. So it turns out Ken's Red is self-fertile. I'm not complaining. There's quite a lot of fruit on it.
Either it's self-fertile, or could perhaps the other kiwi have pollinated it?
You know, in the beginning I suspected pollen was coming in from somewhere else, but this guy here next to it, the other variety, Anona, didn't set fruit. The Hayward fuzzy kiwi didn't set fruit, and like I said, the two male vines that I have didn't flower at all.
Wow. Okay, we've got some interesting avocado babies here.
Yeah, I just planted these here. I've got a much larger Hass avocado behind us. These are my new ones. One right here is a variety called Kahalu. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And it comes from Hawaii, and it's famous for having a ridiculously high fat content.
Very buttery.
Very buttery.
Yeah.
A few people I know who've tasted it have verified that claim. But you know, I'm probably, if it does, you know, I don't know too many people who've grown it up here, so if it does manage to survive and fruit, it'll probably be 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. And your front one is?
Yeah, this one next to it is Jan Boyce, which I've heard Julie Frink call this the connoisseur's avocado. I suppose that's because it makes a very small fruit, but a very good fruit. And that lots of people grow that around California.
Okay, so Joe, we've got peanut butter fruit. Tell us about this.
Who doesn't want to grow something called peanut butter fruit, right? I have tasted peanut butter fruit in Hawaii, and it does kind of taste like unsalted peanut butter. Have you had it, Rick?
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
I would agree that the texture is like peanut butter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it's got that sticky. It's almost more like a date than peanut butter to me. But I don't know anyone who's successfully fruited this up here. But in Southern California, quite a few people have, and I don't know for sure, but I think that this tree was grown originally by Roger Meyer, the late great fruit guy from Orange County.
Orange County, that's right.
Yeah, and the funny thing about peanut butter fruit is nobody seems to be able to identify the exact species of these. So I do know that there are other species that people have tried to grow, including me, and failed to get them to go through winter. And I don't know exactly which one this is, but it has been a lot hardier than the other ones that I've tried, which have come from Florida. So I don't know where Roger got the seeds for this, but he found a good one.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed also some of the fruit has a slightly different color.
Yeah.
You know, to the exterior.
Some of them are red, some of them are orange. Yeah. And it's starting to flower here. I've had these here for 3 years, and other plants too. They flower quite a bit, and I've never gotten a single fruit to set on them.
Joe, this I know is going to be, this next section is going to be one of your favorites because you have quite a collection. I'm standing in front of a Jabuticaba, which is a Brazilian fruit, and please, by all means, take us on a tour.
I got really into Jabuticabas 2 years ago when I went to Hawaii and tasted one for the first time, and I started researching them. It's just such a beautiful tree. I mean, it tastes great, but I think the reason I get obsessed with them is the way they grow, the way they look when a tree is loaded with fruit. The first one I saw in Hawaii was a big tree with a lot of fruit, and the way they cover the trunk, the way the fruit grows on the wood is very beautiful. And they taste great to me. But when I started looking into them, I found out that it's not really a rare fruit. In Brazil, it's a very popular fruit, and they've done a lot of effort to develop higher quality varieties. They've made hybrids, and slowly those are trickling into the US. What got me started was I found a guy in Florida who runs pretty much a one-man nursery called Flying Fox Fruits. And he has collected a ton of Jabuticabas. He must have the biggest collection in the US. And he sells seedlings and grafted trees. So I started collecting those, and next thing you know, I'm knee deep in Jabuticabas here.
So let's take a quick little, before we get started, one of the interesting things about Jabuticaba is how the fruit grows on the plant, if you've never seen one before. You want to explain that, and then let's take a little walking tour.
I might actually have on this tree behind you, there's actually an example. Yeah, here's a picture of a mature tree. This is probably a 100-year-old tree, I'm guessing, and almost every surface of the tree has these fruit stuck to them. It's really beautiful, and you just pluck them off and eat them. It's really fun. To me, I don't think they taste like a grape, to be honest. They have a unique flavor. I wouldn't want to insult the fruit by comparing it to another fruit. It's very unique.
Here is a much larger Jabuticaba, and this one is what type?
Sabara. That's the most common variety you'll find.
Okay, so if someone generically buys one, likely it's this type.
Most likely, that's right, yeah.
But you've got a whole lot of other varieties.
Yes, I have a variety of different species. Some are hybrids of 2 different species, and some are selected cultivars. This is Plinia coronata. Restinga is the cultivar they've attached to this particular I guess you would call it a subspecies. It comes from the Restinga area of Brazil, which is on the coast, and it's famous for being a much more tolerant of different soil conditions, because most Jabuticabas require a lot of acidity in the soil. This one can take more alkaline soil. This one is a species called Plinia phytrantha, and everyone in Brazil claims this species produces the best tasting fruit. They call it castada, and there are a bunch of other phytranthas or castadas that have been developed and have cultivar names. This one I don't know what it is, but the fruit is very beautiful. It has these ridges along the side. This one is, they call it white Jabuticaba, or Plinia oriana. They should really call it green Jabuticaba, but it makes a light fruit, and I don't think it's known for being one of the better tasting ones, but it's a very beautiful tree with very large leaves, and it also happens to be the parent of the red Jabuticaba. That's a hybrid. This one is known as Grimmel. It is named after the American fruit explorer Adolf Grimmel, who had a big collection in the Florida Keys, and he used to go fruit hunting all over the world, and he brought this back from somewhere in Brazil and planted it in the Florida Keys, and that tree is still standing. It's survived many hurricanes. And Adam of Flying Fox Fruits, the nursery I mentioned earlier, got budwood of this and has been propagating it and making it very popular. It's one of my favorites because it has a very distinct Concord grape flavor to it. They call this one Café Jabuticaba in Brazil because it supposedly has kind of a coffee flavor. I haven't verified yet if they're talking about coffee the beverage or coffee the berry, the fruit. But what makes this unique is the fruit, unlike the other ones that looked like they're stuck to the tree, this one has a stem and it hangs like a cherry. And the fruit, or the tree, also weeps like a willow too. It's very beautiful. This is named after Otto Anderson, who was a Brazilian botanist who had a lot of who collected a lot of fruits, and Otto Anderson, they named it after him, but it's also known for being one of the best tasting, and it's actually the same species as Sabra, the common one that everybody has. So this is the yellow Jabuticaba, and it's actually a totally different genus than the other ones. If you look closely at it, you can see it looks very different. It has fuzzy leaves that hang down. The fruit is yellow and fuzzy, and it's very sour. It supposedly has not much flesh, poor flesh to seed ratio. Some people have claimed that there are better ones in Brazil, but I've struggled to keep this tree looking healthy. It seems to complain when it's too hot, complains when the soil pH is too high. So this one's a little challenging. These two trees next to me are the red Jabuticaba, also known as the red hybrid or precocious Jabuticaba. And it's a hybrid between the white Jabuticaba that I just showed you and Plinia cauliflora, another species we didn't get to. And its claim to fame is that, unlike most of these, which can take 10 to 20 years from seed to begin producing fruit, this one is said to take about 3 to 5 years, in Florida at least, which is like Jabuticaba paradise, basically. So I planted two, and I'm finding that claim to be pretty accurate, because they're still not the biggest trees, but both of these just started flowering, and there's actually the first two fruits I've ever had on this tree right here.
So this is the flower, and what happens with the fruit?
This is actually the beginning of a fruit. The flowers have already fallen off. Yeah, so the flowers would be, see this little thin thing sticking out, that's all that's left of the flower, and the fruit forms on the base, and it has almost no stem to it. So it sits on the wood of the tree, on the bark, and it doesn't even really hang. It just kind of, it looks like it's taped to the tree. As it grows and becomes black, it almost looks like some kind of a fungus growing on the tree. I've only got two fruits on this little tree right now. It's not a very dramatic example.
Okay, what have we got this?
Escarlate, or scarlet, that means. This has the same two parents as the red Jabuticaba. It's a hybrid, but it's just a different cross. And it's got an even more reddish fruit. It's very beautiful. I only know one person who's ever tasted it, and he compared it favorably to the red. And right next to me down here we have what's probably my favorite of all of these. It even has its own name, Cambuca, Plinia edulis. I was lucky enough to taste this in Hawaii. Frankie's nursery in Waimanolo, which is outside Honolulu, has a huge Cambuca tree, and he grew that from seed that he got from Brazil, and maybe in the 70s. It's probably the only fruiting Cambuca. Well, there's a few in Florida, but anyway, if you go to Frankie's at the right time of year, you'll be lucky enough to get to taste this. It's big and orange and like the size of an apricot. Definitely my favorite.
Beautiful, beautiful fruit.
Yeah. And behind me are just more Jabuticabas, all different types.
You want to tell us a little about this?
Yeah, these are called air pots or root pruning pots. I'm still sort of debating whether I like them or not, to be honest. The nice thing about them is they prevent your plant from getting root bound. So instead of, if you keep a plant in a pot for a long time, you'll find you'll take it out of the pot and there's a big root swirling around the bottom trying to get out. With these, instead what happens is the roots will hit these holes and stop growing there, and then that signals the plant to create more roots. So when you finally take it out of the pot, you'll find a beautiful root system that isn't stuck, trying to get out the bottom.
So this is another Eugenia?
That's right. This is Eugenia pyriformis, known as Uvia. I've heard mixed reports on how hardy it is, so I'd love to get this in the ground and get it to a big tree for me, but that remains to be seen if it can do that. It's another Eugenia that has yellow fruit that are a little bit on the sour side, but I've had some of those and I really like the flavor, even though it's a little bit sour, so I'm excited about this one.
All right, and this, it looks like something that it isn't.
Yeah. It kind of, well,
it looks like the related to a mangosteen.
Yeah.
But it's not.
You're right. I never really thought that, but you're right. It does the way it's cut open here.
Yeah.
It's actually in the myrtle family. It's similar to a guava.
Okay.
The genus on this is called Campomenesia, which is a huge genus that comprises a lot of cold-tolerant plants from Brazil. Again, like the Eugenias. This tree actually, though, came to me from Ben Poirier down at Fallbrook.
Oh, really?
He has been propagating and selling these trees. He's got a big one that's fruiting. He likes the fruit, and I think it's a beautiful tree as well.
So we've got another rare one here. What have we got?
This one's kind of a mystery.
Ouch.
Yeah, don't get near the plant. Don't touch the plant. It's one of those solanums like tree tomato, or sorry, like lulo or narania, which has a lot of thorns.
Yeah.
This one was found by a friend of mine who went fruit hunting in South America. Found this thing. No one really is sure what it is. Someone took a guess that it's Solanum Paki, but I think we need to do more study on that one. He reported the fruit was super delicious. It reminded him of a green apple Jolly Rancher. Sounds good to me. It looks kind of like a tree tomato fruit.
Yeah. So, what have we here?
This is turmeric.
All right.
I am still surprised that I can grow this here because it seems extremely tropical. I've tried and failed to grow ginger. Ginger seems to like, I don't know, humidity or more heat than we have or something. It doesn't really grow, but turmeric, which is related to ginger, grows fantastic. And the reason it's a good plant to grow here is it really only needs 6 months of the year to do its thing above ground. It's dormant from whenever you get a frost till about mid-June. It comes back from the roots. So you stick it in the ground, buy a cutting at your local grocery store that sells little turmeric roots. Stick it in the ground. Around June it'll pop out, and in December, whenever you get a frost, the top will die back. You dig it up, you should get a pretty good crop, and then you just stick a few more in a pot, and June starts all over again.
Interesting. What is turmeric good for? Now, there's a lot of it on TV and advertisements as a health product.
Yeah, I'm not gonna make a fool of myself by trying to tell you why turmeric is good for you.
Excellent.
It's good for you, so eat it.
Eat it.
Yeah, it goes good in stir fries. You can, of course, dehydrate it and make a powder if you want to preserve it. And it's got a nice flavor. It's a mild, subtle flavor. I add it to the powder. I add it to a lot of things. And when you've got fresh turmeric root, you can freeze it, and just whenever you want to make a stir fry or something, just slice some and throw it in there.
I'm going to add one more to that. I was in England last year, and we were served turmeric on top of cereal.
What?
Yeah, with milk and berries and nuts, and oh my gosh, it's a health food.
I'm gonna try that.
You got to try it. It was great. So we have here what looks very familiar to me. It's not an avocado. Have you guessed yet? My favorite fruit. And
the mango, or mango, some would say. Mangoes are very challenging, basically virtually impossible to grow up here in Northern California. But I like those sorts of challenges. So 2 years ago I planted this mango, which I have no idea what variety it is. I bought it because it was very big, and I thought a big tree with a lot of bark on it would survive the winter better. When I bought it, though, it was about twice as tall as it is right now. That's why I have these stakes here to keep it upright. But 2 winters ago, it actually had quite a bit of fruit on it going into December, and then we had 3 very cold nights, about 28, 29 degrees, and all the fruit turned black and fell off.
that'll do
And
it.
everything from here down to here died off, and I wound up cutting it back.
Yeah.
But my theory about the bark proved to work out, so it survived and it sprouted back, and
you've got new leaves,
yeah,
and yeah, new sprouts over here too.
it's growing, and
Yep.
it didn't get damaged at all last winter when we only got down to maybe 29 or 30.
Wow. Good luck. Another experiment in progress.
Thanks, Elmer.
Okay, we are now joined by Joe's lovely wife.
Jesseline.
Thank you.
Yes, she just came down to keep me hydrated with this. This is actually passion fruit juice from a year ago that's been in our freezer because the vine just cranks out so many fruit.
We're trying to get through it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it. Is the only thing you do with it making juice, or do you do other things?
We do all kinds of things. Well, we make like passion fruit curd, or it's what is called lilikoi butter.
Lilikoi butter,
That's what they call it.
Okay, Justine, before he finishes that,
Oh,
would you
little
mind?
too late.
Would you mind telling? How do you make that?
It's
What's
really
your
easy.
recipe?
It's really easy. So you freeze them in 1 cup increments in the
Okay.
silicone pads, and then you blend it with like 3 or 4 ice cubes, and you fill it with water, a little bit of raw honey, and then you blend it up. And
That's
then you
it?
drink Yeah.
What? Now, do you separate the seeds out?
Yeah, we do.
Yes.
How do we do that again?
I did that all last year. When I get a few big bowls of it, I just go at it and I, cut them in half, squeeze them through a sieve, sift out the seeds
Right.
into a big bowl, and then I just freeze them in those silicone molds, 1 cup cubes.
Gotcha.
Didn't we try a juicer once?
Yeah, the juicer works okay, but it crushes the seeds and then it gets really gritty. So
Yeah.
you don't want to crush the seeds in a
Joe, once again, I would like to thank you for allowing us into this beautiful garden of yours and getting the opportunity to see things and share things with the viewers that normally they wouldn't get to see. And Justine, thank you also so much
It's been a
for
pleasure.
allowing us to come and take the time of your husband. So this has been wonderful. Now, please, right now, if you're on Facebook, like it, or even better, love it. Share this with your friends. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe. We really appreciate it, and we need every time that you possibly can to click those for us. Thank you.
There.
Try to get them before the bugs. Yep. This. So there you go. You can cut that one.
Vodka's the clear stuff, yeah.
Well, see, the key is to let John pour.
And then, well, then.
Well, there won't be any left if I pour it. Come on.
2.
Okay, we are now joined by Joe's lovely wife, Jocelyn.
Then I'm looking.
No,
3,
this works.
2.
So, Joe, I would really like to thank you for allowing us into your garden today, and Jocelyn, you all allowing us
Cut.
to come take. Joe's
And
gonna
I've been
catch
okay
me
with
in.
it, so it wasn't my
Rick,
fault.
what's her name?
Jocelyn.
That's fine. That is totally acceptable. So, tell me a little bit about this tree.
This tree here is it's a citrus tree called Shiranui. It comes from Japan, and actually just recently it's been introduced to California under the name Sumo. My wife really loves these, and they're very expensive, so I had to plant this tree to keep us from going bankrupt, spending $3.99 on these little mandarins.
Shiranui. Go bless you.
Thanks, Rick.
You're welcome. We done. That's all I got.
That was great.
And if you see it on Facebook, by all means, damn,
It's all right. Just keep going. Just keep going.
I'm blank.
YouTube. Subscribe.
That's it.